Hello, everybody, and welcome into another Hockey Writers Roundtable here. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by Jacob Billington. Jacob, how's it going? We've got our Four Nations face-off is the only hockey that's going on right now, unless you're obviously following prospects and stuff. There's still that, but how's it going?
It's going good. I've been really enjoying this Four Nations. I was a bit hesitant just because I wasn't sure about the buy-in from the players, but they're giving 150%. This is the Olympics to them, so I'm loving it.
For sure. Actually, I've actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would too, actually. So, I mean, let's jump right into that because that's the biggest thing to talk about. Takeaways from this Four Nations face-off so far. I mean, we're pretty much, I'd say, halfway through the tournament, and we already have Team USA as solidified to be in the final. And now it's just what teams are going to, or what team is going to face them there, and all of them have a chance to do it. So, what do you think about the tournament so far? Any big standouts? I think maybe we'll just start with the USA Canada game because that was a pretty good one. What did you think about the start of it? Because that was the biggest thing. Bunch of fights in the first 7 seconds, which is I think the last time I saw that was, at least personally, was the Canucks and Flames way back when they had a line brawl right at the beginning of the game. But what do you think about that game to start?
I think it's awesome. I mean, it's entertainment. That's what this tournament is really about, is the entertainment value. Obviously, like you heard after the game, Matthew Tkachuk say that there was a group chat with him, Brady, and JT Miller saying, how are we going to make a statement here? Like, what are we going to do? And then they all just grabbed their guy and whatever. So it was really funny. One of the funniest parts of this whole tournament has been when JT Miller, right in front of the net, he just dropped his gloves and waited for anybody to come over. And Colton Parayko, who's got like, I don't know, a foot and a half on him almost. Not really, but sure looked like it. Just came over and he's like, let's go. And it was awesome. So that first 9 seconds was just pure entertainment, and everybody should have loved it. There's people that are upset about it, calling it stupid and whatnot, and that it's staged and it's just showmanship and what. Shut up. Like, I don't know. I think that it is exactly what hockey is, and the rivalry between Canada and the United States. That's what it is. It's aggressive, and it shows how passionate these players are. It wasn't staged. It wasn't fake or anything like that. So I think it was phenomenal.
Well, if you go back in history of Canada-US, this rivalry is really physical. There's lots of fights in different tournaments that have been in the past. So this is not new. This is not something that is like you said, staged or created. This was something that's been, I mean, Canada-US, I mean, that's a rivalry that's gone back many years. World Juniors, World Championships, other Olympics. I mean, it's been a crazy rivalry, and because the countries are, of course, just separated by a border, it is a geographical rivalry too. So I mean, it is very exciting to see that type of passion at the beginning of a game, and especially, I mean, the game itself was pretty exciting too. There was quite a few really good chances, pretty defensive. I mean, the shots, there weren't a lot of shots in the game, but what do you think about Canada's performance in that? I mean, you're looking at, especially at the end of the game there, I mean, US really locked it down defensively, didn't really give a lot. When you have so many stars, were you surprised by maybe the lack of offense that Canada has had, maybe in just against the US, maybe even overall?
I mean, it's the biggest takeaway from that in terms of the offense was I think people took it too seriously when, so obviously against Sweden, the biggest one from that, and I know we're going to talk about that, was Nathan MacKinnon doing all the work on his own in overtime and not passing. And so everybody kind of scrutinized him and said, like, stop being so selfish and whatever. And so I think the players took that too seriously. There wasn't enough selfishness. Everybody was too selfless and wanted to pass the puck to the next guy and be the one to make the nice pass, but give somebody else the goal because they deserve it too. You just got to score. And obviously we saw it with Connor McDavid's goal. That was an individual effort. But other than that, there was absolutely no individual effort from these top. Like, Nathan MacKinnon is without a doubt the second best player in the league. Could even be first, depending on who you ask. And there was none of that individual stuff from him. They have so many other extremely talented players. They didn't have those individual efforts. Playing as a team is a good thing, and you do have to do that when you're going against the United States. But you also have to use your individual skill, and I think that's where Canada kind of fell apart offensively. And then defensively, you even have like Sidney Crosby with a really tough giveaway in the defensive zone, leading to a goal. It happens, but I don't know. It was a frustrating game.
Yeah. Well, there was one play that Connor McDavid where he's coming in. He should have shot the puck, and he just tries to pass it off and gets picked off. I mean, that's a you got to be selfish. Just shoot it. You have a good chance there, and he's got one of the better shots in the NHL. Just shoot it. I mean, trying to get it to a pass. I mean, if the pass went through, everyone would be like, "What a great pass!" But he's got to shoot it there. The goal was really nice. I mean, you're looking at like Drew Doughty. What a pass he made to McDavid there, and he kind of looked like Crosby with as Crosby was his backhander is probably one of the best in the league. And for a second, I thought it was Crosby that scored it. I'm like, what a backhander! But it was McDavid. But I mean, he's got that ability in his skill set too. Overall, I mean, Canada's. I mean, they could be kicked. They won't make the final if they don't win in regulation against Finland. So looking ahead to that game, what do you think? Do they have a chance? I mean, Finland's been pretty good. They did win against Sweden in overtime. What do you think about that matchup? Who do you think is going to come out at that one?
I mean, it's going to be Canada. They're not going to go down without. I mean, Finland, like you said, like they have put together a really good tournament so far. They've got one game left unless they go to the final. They've been really impressive. They obviously didn't have a great showing against the United States, but they still played well. And obviously they played very well against Sweden. I'm really impressed with, because obviously they don't have the star power that Canada and US and even Sweden has, but they play like a team that's played together a lot, and you get that out of Finland. All these players play on like 3 different teams. That's it. You got Carolina, Dallas, and Florida make up probably like 60, 70% of that team. So they know how to play with each other, which is a huge benefit. But you look at the defense, obviously they don't have the biggest names out there, especially with Heiskanen out, but they're all really good defensive presences. Like Henri Jokiharju, why is he in a best on best tournament? I don't know. Same with like Nicholas Matin-Palo. And I mean, full credit to them. They're playing phenomenal, and they've been good throughout the regular season too. But those aren't the guys that you think of when you think of best on best tournaments. But they're still proving that they belong there. And that is the biggest takeaway for me for Finland, is their guys are just proving that they belong there and playing really good defensively. And that's what Finland is all about. You look at Sebastian Aho, you look at Alexander Barkov, all the defensemen, they're really, really good defensively. So they just take pride in that part. And I think that could be Canadian killers right there, is that defensive game. But I do think that, I don't know, I don't think there's any way that Canada comes out of this with a loss.
I mean, yeah, Finland always surprises me, and it doesn't matter what tournament it is. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised anymore, because they're always in these things. And because, like you said, they're very team oriented. They always play. They know how to play this style, and they just come together. It doesn't matter what tournament, what time it is. They always seem to be able to compete. And, they may not win gold medals and stuff like that all the time, but they're always giving these supposedly higher powered teams fits, and that's what they've been doing in this tournament too. I wouldn't be surprised if they did beat Canada. I mean, it could happen, but we'll see how that all goes when they face off against each other.
They're like Czechia. Czechia is always just good.
That's like, another one.
Nobody expects them to go to win a tournament, but you can never count them out.
No, and they technically should be in this one too, but that's another. I mean, this is probably the last time. I mean, World Cup of Hockey is the next thing, and that's confirmed. And they are going to be doing something every 2 years, which is great. And that's I think the biggest thing that. I mean, this thing is probably a one-off. I don't think they're doing this Four Nations face-off ever again. It's going to be World Cup of Hockey from here on out. But yeah. What do you think about Team Sweden? I mean, Sweden hasn't won. They haven't won a game. They've got a couple losses, right? OT losses. And I mean, I've been a little disappointed with, of course, Elias Pettersson. I thought he was going to maybe have a good tournament. So far, he hasn't really stood out when I've watched. What do you think about Sweden's performance so far?
Yeah, I mean, Pettersson hasn't been great. Zibanejad, he had some good shift, but he hasn't been great. Adrian Kempe, you'd like to see more out of him. And the only one that's been truly dominant on Sweden is Erik Karlsson, which is so fun to watch. He is the most fun player to watch outside of Connor McDavid when he's at his peak. So hard to really say. I mean, their goaltending hasn't been great either. Philip Gustafsson and Linus Ullmark not putting the best tournament stats up. Everything is just all right for them. They're really struggling to take that step into like, we're going to take over this game. And I don't know. I did a power ranking of the 4 teams before the tournament started, and I had Sweden in last. I didn't see that bite from them. Obviously, like I mentioned with Team Finland, they don't have the same superstars. I mean, they do. They have Barkov and Rantanen, but they just don't have the same depth. Where Sweden kind of, I was teetering. Obviously, I forgot to say William Nylander. He's playing really well. But like outside of him, there's nobody that's having a great like a phenomenal season. And even Erik Karlsson not having a great season, but showing up at this tournament is good. So I had them 4th, and they're kind of making my point for me.
Yeah, I mean, Elias Lindholm has also not been good. I was really just extending from the regular season for these two guys, Pettersson and Lindholm, not having the best season, not having the best tournament. I mean, that's just how it's gone for them. And I was hoping that Pettersson would have at least an okay tournament, and we can bring it back to the regular season and have some confidence. At this point, it's not looking that way. It's just adding to his criticism, which is kind of unfortunate. Because there's already criticism on Twitter and stuff about him, how he's doing in here, and it's been disappointing. He is playing a checking line role, I guess. He's not playing in the top power play. He wasn't in overtime in the first couple groupings. So, I mean, he's seems to be not relied on to be an offensive force, and he's playing for an old coach too. I mean, Sam Hallam coached him in Sweden when he was in his draft year and before that. So I was hoping that maybe he had some confidence in putting him out there a lot more, but obviously it hasn't happened.
I'm excited to watch USA Sweden, see Miller and Pettersson go head to head.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes with that. And to finish off, any other thoughts about USA? I mean, we all know the physicality. The Kachucks have been, they've been great for them so far. Matthew Tkachuk wasn't playing for the rest of the game there. It seemed like he was maybe injured. USA, of course, they're in the final, so they have a good chance of winning this all. But any other thoughts on USA's performance so far here?
Yeah, I mean, they've been a powerhouse. They've been a juggernaut. There's no getting through the physicality. And even if you do, their defense is just so strong. And even if you get through that, Connor Hellebuyck looks as good as Connor Hellebuyck ever has. USA was, I think it's not a hot take to say that they were the favorite coming into this, especially the forwards and defense. You could go back and forth between them and Canada. But when you look at Hellebuyck versus Binnington, that's the biggest discrepancy there. So I think that this is USA's tournament to lose. Obviously, they're already clinched into the final. There's not much to say to this. From top to bottom, they've been dominant. Matthew Tkachuk, I don't think he's going to play against Sweden. He doesn't have to. They're already clinched in a spot. They're going to let Chris Kreider go in, get some ice time. Not deserving of a spot on this team this season, but here he is anyway. It's USA has just been absolutely dominant in every facet of the game.
Yeah, and even without Quinn Hughes as which is, everyone thought maybe they'd struggle without him there. But, they've got some really great players that have come in. Their defense still looks really good even without him. it would just even be better with him. But just from a Canucks perspective, it's good he's not playing because he'd be battling an injury, and with the physicality that they're dishing out and other teams are going against them too, I have a feeling he might have gotten hurt more, and that's not good for the Canucks and for the league because everyone wants to watch him throughout the season. So overall it was a good decision by him not to go to this tournament. All right, let's move to a couple things that changed. Maybe they're doing experiments for this to see if they maybe move it to the NHL. Let's start with the overtime being extended to 10 minutes, 3-on-3, which everyone loves 3-on-3. There is some debate of what to change other things about it to make it more exciting. But we'll start with this. What do you think about it moving to 10 minutes rather than the 5?
10 minutes is a long time. But at the same time, so obviously we heard Nathan MacKinnon coming out and saying, hey, like, this sucks. I was really tired. Well, yeah, you played the whole thing and didn't pass the puck. And credit to him. Sometimes he doesn't have to pass the puck. He's Nathan MacKinnon. But when you're the coach and you want to put out your best guys for the 3-on-3, they're going to get tired. They haven't had time to adjust to a 10-minute overtime. They don't know the strategies that they need to be using. So it would take some time to adjust for sure. Obviously, Nathan MacKinnon and Connor McDavid can't play the whole 7 minutes at that speed.
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous. But it's the most entertaining hockey that I've ever watched in my entire life. That Canada-Sweden overtime, it was unreal. So I would love to see it come to the NHL. They could maybe get away with 7 minutes, at least to start, just to give a little bit of adjustment period and whatever. But I think everybody was surprised that overtime made it to the 7-minute mark.
Yeah.
So, and like, we got that much entertainment out of that 7 minutes. If they followed the NHL rules, that game would have ended in a shootout, and nobody wants to see that. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing. Obviously, in the playoffs, they don't do the shootout. They have the continuous overtime. That's the right thing. Nobody wants to see Stanley Cup awarded in a shootout.
Yeah.
But for a regular season, I think the 3-on-3 overtime should be extended to at least 7 or 8 minutes. 10 minutes would be the more the merrier.
I loved 3-on-3 at the beginning when they first put it in. It was so fun. It was so chaotic. And I think it slowed down a bit because teams are we can't do this. We can't go crazy with breakaways, 3-on-1s, whatever it is. So they do that, regroup, move out, change back, and it kind of gets a little slow. I think they've got to maybe change that a bit, put maybe a penalty for, you can only exit the zone. I don't know. I don't know how they do it. Maybe a shot clock, you can only be in the zone for a certain, and once you can't leave once you're in there. I don't know.
I think the best thing to do would have the NBA backcourt rule. You can't cross the red line again.
Yeah, I think something like that, because it does get a little tedious when you're watching this. They're like, come on, just keep going. Stop backing out and going back in and all that stuff. But I think moving it to 10 minutes, there's more of a chance that it's going to end in overtime rather than it going to a shootout. Because I think most games will end if it's 10 minutes. Before a shootout happens. If it does, then maybe it deserves to go to a shootout because it's just not going. But I think 10 minutes would. But there is definitely a change in strategy because you can't have your best players out there all the time. Maybe there'll be some depth. Teams that have more depth in their lineup will benefit because you'll be throwing out maybe your third line guys in overtime rather than just relying on your top top 6, right? Or maybe 3 or 4 different players. So, it might change a bit for some teams, but I think the biggest thing is to make sure it doesn't go to a shootout. And this definitely would, I think, change that. All right. The other thing that they've changed is putting 3 points for a regulation win, 2 for an OT win, and 1 for an OT loss. So that's no change. But this, I've been an advocate of this for a long time. I think this is something that the NHL should put into practice makes it that teams won't want to go to overtime because you've lost a point already. What do you think about this moving to the NHL? Is it something that could happen? What are the benefits of it, or even the drawbacks?
I think that it makes a lot of sense. I think that there should absolutely be an extra reward for getting a regulation win over an overtime win. It's harder to get a regulation win, without a doubt. My biggest thing is, so I think it's a good idea. I think they should do it. The people that are strongly against the just the 2-1 system are, like, if you look at the standings and like what would it look like if it was 3-2-1? Obviously teams would have more points, but the standings look the same for the most part. There might be one or two teams swapped, or one team in the playoffs, one team out, but they're pretty well the same. And it's the same as the 1 versus 8 and then the wild card for the playoffs. It's pretty much the same most years. Sometimes the seeding might switch up a little bit, but it's still the same result. So I'm not like a huge advocate of it. I don't think that it needs to be, but I think it's a good idea. And I think that it's not going to hurt anything. I don't know why Gary Bettman this is a hill that he seems to be willing to die on, but I don't know why it's not in the NHL, but I don't think it makes a huge difference either.
I've been an advocate of this, but I want to extend it a bit to make it that no one gets points for, it doesn't matter. There shouldn't be a 1 point for loss. It should just be 0. You get 3 for a regulation win, 2 for OT win, nothing for any loss. I mean, it doesn't matter where you go, you get nothing. That would change a lot, because teams that go to overtime, they still get points. I mean, this season, maybe a little bit more because the Canucks have a bunch of points for OT losses. But I mean, for teams that, like, I was in with the Boston Bruins last season, they made the playoffs because of all their OT losses. I mean, you take away their, I think it was 15 points that they got from OTLs, they're not there. I mean, they're not there. And that's what the case with the Canucks and some other teams that are in double digits already for OTLs. The standings would be a lot different. So I don't know. I think they should have a 3-2 system rather than the 3-2-1. I don't think that's going to happen. Batman seems to love that loser point. So I don't know. I think that may stay.
I don't mind the loser point. I think I do understand the, like, either win or lose. And so you either get points or you don't. But also, if it gets to a shootout, that's a coin flip at that point. But yeah, I'm not firm on either side with that, to be honest. I'd be fine either way.
We'll see. I mean, I think they did this maybe to see an experiment. I mean, it's not really a big experiment over a small tournament of what these standings would do. But I think maybe implementing it in the AHL first, which is they usually do. With some of these rule changes, they put it in the AHL, see how it goes for a season, and then if it did go fine, then they move it to the NHL. So that might happen where they do this 3-2-1 system in the AHL first and see how that goes for a season, and maybe implement it in the NHL. But we'll see how that goes. Same thing with the overtime being extended to 10 minutes. They might do that in the AHL to see how that goes. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if these rule changes actually come into play, because I know the overtime has been discussed at governor meetings in the past. So, I mean, it's something they have discussed, and we'll see if some of those changes do happen. All right. Well, that Four Nations face-off does continue tomorrow or later today. You're watching this. We'll see how it all goes, see who's going to make it to that final game and who wins. And once then the NHL can get back to its regular programming the week after. And we'll continue the push to the playoffs and the draft and all that fun stuff. But make sure you're checking out everything at thehockeywriters.com. We've got great stuff from the Four Nations, all recaps, takeaways right after the game. So make sure you're checking all that out, and any other features that the other teams writing teams are doing for all the other teams there. And of course, all the other articles we have on the site. But until our next episode, we will see you next time.